Hello, hello. This is Pierre Dacot working at Planet Technologies. Today I want to talk about a topic which is learning. What it takes to learn. Um, there's a lot of confusion. We've seen some many studies saying that there's people are struggling to learn, especially about the digital transformation. So when you're doing a digital transformation, a part of it is to strategize the learning. And I want to walk you through the methodology and maybe some advice that I use to strategize the strategy, to build a strategy of learning. Because learning is not just moving from point A to point B, learn something. It's a constant effort because not only the tools are changing um, at a fast pace, so maybe uh, when you finish your when you think that you're at the destination of learning, your knowledge is obsolete. So it's a constant learning effort. And so you need to build some muscle to be able to learn constantly. And you need to have a global strategy to do that. And also, what we've seen many times, especially around digital and particularly around digital workplace, people are not willing to learn at first because they don't see the return on investment of their time spending to learn because they were used to go into a learning system, go through mandatory learning training and not taking a lot of value because they are exposed to so many things. And after viewing those videos, probably 1 or 2 days after, they forgot 70% of what they learned. So there should be another strategy to make the learning easier for people and more meaningful. And that's why I think it's also a matter of process, not only about what you're gonna learn. So let me walk you through the way I approach the learning strategy. First, I think it's key to get to know your users. Um, Having one size fits all strategy rarely works. Uh, People are different. People are different, level of tech savviness. People have different jobs. People have different use cases. So definitely, you need to learn your people, and the first thing to do is to segment them into personas. So the personas, are a category of people that have the same needs and same usage. So you can target them with specific and dedicated training. So in general, the way I segment people, there are information workers, people who are in front of the computer all day. There are task workers, people who are from time to time in front of their computer. Often they share a computer. There are frontline workers, people who are not rarely using a computer, but they're maybe using a smartphone or a tablet. You have road warriors, people who are on the go all the time, everywhere. They're taking the plane, taking the train, taking the car to move somewhere. Sometimes it's Salesforce, the sales reps. Uh, but you have other personas like VIP. They probably learn differently than other people. They are managers. They are exec assistants who help their VIPs. They are champions or power users, specific people you want to leverage. And definitely, it's a good way to spread the learning and to sustain the learning and the change. And then there are some people who have specific needs because they're doing specific things. So you need to know those people, to adapt, adjust your not only your communication but also your training. So first, get to know your user, and the first step is to segment who are your users. The second thing is once you identify those people, you interview with a panel of them to understand what is the storytelling behind their job, how they use the technology, for what use cases, what is important for them, where are they struggling, what are their pains, and better understand, their context. A second way to collect information on people is to do a survey. It's more at scale than an interview. Interview is more to really have some storytelling that you can reuse after, during the communication campaigns and also during the training. But the survey is to identify what are the big pockets where you need to really focus. For example, if you survey people and you find out that people struggle with one application, but it's somehow critical for them, then that means you need to do something specific, and maybe you need to do interviews. So maybe you want to do the survey before the interviews, so you can find out where the problems are. The third, so segmentation, interview, survey, and the last one is to collect information, is to do a focus group. So a focus group is you demonstrate all the goodness of what's coming in terms of technology, and you ask people to prioritize what has the most impact, what is the most impactful, what is the most useful, so that you can identify where you need to communicate and when you need to train, because you don't want to train on everything. That's the first reason people don't want to come to training, because there's so many things that is not really interesting for them. So you need to focus on what is really interesting, and sometimes during these focus groups you will see that for one persona it will be a total different approach than for the other. So that way also you identify the differences, and then you're able to tailor your training to the personas. So that's really the first phase, is to assess. The second is to build a strategy. So there are several ways to do training. There's not, once again, there's no one size fits all. There's not one way to do it. There's not a magic one. So you need to identify what is the best way, depending on your personas, to address the learning. So I'm going to list a few directions. You can do lunch and learns. So you demonstrate the technology before it arrives somewhere. You can do office hours. So you set up a meeting where people can come and ask questions, because maybe they did the training and they don't have the answers, or maybe they heard of something about what's coming and they want to ask questions, or maybe they have specific questions regarding what they're trying to achieve. That's part of the learning too, learning activities. You can definitely provide a learning platform so people can learn at their rhythm. It's a self-paced training environment where they will. It's better to have micro-learning at Planet. We provide a very good micro-learning platform called Evolve 365 with thousands of videos, so you can learn at your own pace on different topics, depending on also on your persona. I mean, that persona is more oriented in am I an expert or am I a beginner? So I'm not starting at the same point. So learning platform is definitely helpful. Also, another avenue to learn is through champions. So training champions will be definitely helpful, because you're probably going to train them on the technology you're deploying and less on the use case, and they are able to translate the technology into use cases and promote those use cases to the people. And so then you scale the training, the learning, going through champions, because they are the one who really know how to explain the technology in context of their work. Um, Manager sessions, you might want to also train managers so they can become role model. They can show how to use the technology. They can understand better the technology so they can promote it. You also have a typical normal formal training with an instructor. It's more aimed to power users. So you have a specific, for example, if I take the Microsoft platform, you deploy SharePoint or you're deploying Teams. So you might have specific training for Teams owners or for SharePoint owners because it's specific. It requires to understand more features, so you can have this dedicated training for this population. Also, what I've seen with some customers, and actually they're the one who gave me this idea, and I saw it very successful. They were doing practice sessions, so they were actually it was the champions who had the idea of let's book an hour and let's practice what's new. And so it's a little bit like the ask a question, but it's more like let me show you and then ask me questions. So it's a peer-to-peer training with usually with champions. It's very, very powerful. And also tips and tricks. So this is what I call community learning. So tips and tricks can be provided by IT if they're really knowledgeable on features. So usually it's tips and tricks on features. But if you want tips and tricks contextualized to your job, to your persona, it's better if the champions share tips and tricks. Let's say, oh, I'm going to explain to you how I leverage SharePoint calendar in Teams to manage our huddles. So they're tips and tricks in context of your job. So once again, champions are key in this journey. Also, you need to define what subjects you want to put in your training. So there's a different level to approach things. So the first thing you can do, train on product. Okay, I'm going to train on Teams, so I'm going to do whatever activity I just listed on Teams to present the concept of Teams, to present how it works, blah blah. As a whole, it's more introduction to Teams. But also you can train on features. So you're focusing only on Teams for collaboration. So I'm going to show you how to use channels, how to do a post, how to attach a document, and all the nice things you can do in Teams for collaboration. Feature oriented. And quite frankly, you need to understand how to use the technology. So feature training is important. You might not want to train on everything it can do, but it's important to identify what is essential for people to be able to start their journey of learning. Then there's another strategy. I think it comes maybe a little bit after, or sometimes it can be up front. It's to train on use cases. So you address a use case and you show how you handle this use case in the technology. So for Teams, for example, is my use case, I'm a project manager or I'm working on project. So how do I leverage Teams to work on project? So I'm also showing features, but I also show how to organize, give some advice, some guidance, how to work in the project with Teams, and so on. The fourth type of fourth way of addressing learning. So there is you teach on product, you teach on features, you teach on use cases. There's also depending on where you want to go, if it's a transformation you want to achieve, you can teach on behaviors. Because technology is not only about how to use the technology, the features, even the use cases, it's also how to change your behaviors, how you change the way you work. So if I take the example of Teams, again, there's might be some digital etiquette you want to promote, like what is transparency, what it means to collaborate, um, not in terms of what tools, even if you need to connect to the tools to explain when you're describing, what is transparency, what it means to accept that people fail. You need to translate that in teams. But you advocate for new behaviors. Same thing for meetings, for Teams meetings. It's obvious if you want to manage and control your meetings, there are ways. There are, you know, change in behaviors need to happen, especially with remote workforce. And you need to change the way you're working. So you need to set some guidance, some governance around how you hold, and maybe even how you prepare a meeting prior to the meeting, how you create your meeting, and how you invite people, and how you set the rules, how you introduce the meeting, how you run the meeting, how you wrap up the meeting, how you end the meeting, how you discuss after the meeting. So there's some behaviors that need to be described. That's what I usually call a digital etiquette. And that's also one training that can be very helpful for end users. Finally, you need to execute your strategy. So it's just take your plan. So you identify the list of training you want to do, the form of this training, and then you need to execute it. But when you think about executing a learning strategy, it's just like for any other components in the digital transformation. You need to measure if it's successful, because you might not have the good plan, the right plan right away. So you need to adjust. So you need to measure, and there are several ways to measure if your learning plan is successful. The first one is to see how people are consuming the platform. So there's several ways to do that. If I take again the example of Teams, you can measure how many teams have been created, how many people are using Teams in channels. And so you see if the training has an impact, and if people are, adopting and using the technology. You can also, if you have this learning platform like Evolve provides a set of reports, so you can see who's what training is trending, who connected to the learning platform recently, how much time did they spend to learn, stuff like that. So you have that kind of data, and you can make a correlation between what it was consumed and this platform, and to see if people who learn in this platform consume more the Teams, for example. So you see that there's direct impact between people who are learning in the platform, and you see they're using the platform more than people who are not learning in the platform. So that's another way to measure, but also a simple way to measure is to survey. And I think it's a good practice to survey people and ask them how they're satisfied. So you can ask them how they're satisfied with their new environment. And also you can ask them how they're satisfied with the end user support, meaning all the training activities you put in place. Because having that kind of feedback helps you definitely to adjust. And also, so it's open feedback. It should be constructive, not destructive. Positive criticism to make things better. And also, you need to ask champions for that same kind of feedback. You need to ask champions to share their success and their failure, because I run several champions program, and you see that you learn a lot from both. You learn a lot from the success stories, because people are giving ideas to their peers on how to leverage the technology for the job, but also from the failures, because people are struggling and other people are not struggling. So when you share your failures, other people can help you and say how they fix the problem. And it's having this discussion, this dialogue is really important and help you to adjust your strategy. So also you can sustain the learning in several ways. So to amplify in a way the learning, I think it's really key to work with managers, because managers are probably the first roadblock in a digital transformation. Maybe because they're the man in the middle. Um, and so, since this kind of a digital transformation brings a lot of change in the way management should behave, like, transparency is not easy for a manager when they were used to control things. So you need to coach managers to help them, for several reasons. So the first one is to help them feel comfortable with the technology. They don't want to feel, stupid in front of the team. Second, you want to help their team to filter what is really important in the training that you're proposing to your end users. So if they have a good understanding of what you're proposing, and they can adjust and say, okay, I think those trainings are really key for these people in my team. Those trainings are more important for those other people in my team. So that's another reason you should coach manager, and also you should coach manager so they can feel not only comfortable with the technology but with the new behaviors, and educate them why transparency is key and how it's beneficial for them. So also train the managers on what is beneficial in the digital transformation for them. And finally, another way to amplify the learning is to leverage champions. Definitely, I think that's the first source of success, is to have a champions community and leverage them so they can translate, really literally translate the technology in use cases. And even for a specialist like me, it's hard to do this translation because I'm not a specialist of what they're doing. I don't know exactly what they're doing. I don't know exactly what they need. So I might have some ideas. So I might present features with an idea, but they're better if they understand the technology, and if you have some dialogue with the champions, then they realize where it applies the best, and they're able to train their peers and translate literally the features into use cases, and useful use cases, day-to-day use cases. So my conclusion about this is, the digital era is not a destination. It's a journey, especially around learning. It's a journey. It's a process. OCM helps to manage this process, and it's a mindset. You need to change your mindset. Um, it's key to have in mind that successful learning is perpetual learning. The change in digital are constant. They are more and more important. So you need to train just like you train your body um, to run or to do whatever exercise. You train your brain to learn, because there's going to be change fatigue. There's really change fatigue, because especially there's change fatigue when you're submissive to that, when you don't have any choice, or you feel you don't have any choice. But when you train to learn all the time, then it's become easier and easier to learn those things. So I think it's really key to change this mindset of learning. It's a perpetual learning. It won't go away. Uh, it's important to learn how to learn. What is the best way to address this fatigue? Uh, so maybe it's being curious every day, learning through your peers. There's several ways to enjoy the learning. Quite frankly, also it's the concept of realizing that learning is beneficial. Uh, so you need to help people to translate that what they learn is beneficial for them in their context, in their life. Um, so it's important to engage and motivate people, especially managers should do that, to learn. it's key to learn. It's beneficial. Um, we know that it takes time, but this time as a return investment, as soon as you identify well what is beneficial to learn, and also keep an open mind to see maybe some areas where you don't think the benefits today but might be useful for tomorrow. Um, so I think that the what is also important when you do when you have a learning strategy is really to think, put your feet in the people's shoes to understand really what is impactful, what is beneficial for them. Because if you don't do that, if you don't know your people, you won't provide the right learning approach. And they will be overwhelmed, and they will drop it, or they will do it and just to do it and forget about it. So it's really key to focus on the benefits, the people benefits, and not just the organization benefits, because the people benefits will trigger or will result in their organization benefits. Also, I will really finish with this this remark. Definitely, there's a change of mindset that needs to happen in a lot of organizations, because the best way, from far, the best way to learn is to fail. You learn more about your failure than about your success. And to succeed, you need to fail. People who are succeeding the most are the people who fail the most. And because it's the same muscle. You want to go again, and you need to go again. And finally you succeed because you find a way. There's no magic wand that make you learn fast, quickly, everything you need right now. So you need to fail. So your organization needs to accept the fact that people are going to fail, and that's part of the learning curve. I think this is really key, and that means the mindset of some organization is to change and understand that even if people fail in learning and using the technology, the organization needs to reassure people that this failure is good as long as people acknowledge the failure and want to learn something about this failure. And the organization needs to reassure their workforce that it's not bad to fail. It's a normal process. It takes time, so they also need to be patient. It takes time. It takes failure. But what is important at the end of the day is that you learn from this failure, you be curious about why you failed, you adjust to this failure, find solution, and then that way you learn. But also you need to share this, because you don't want everybody to fail. You might want to take benefits of somebody's failing and helping others to understand where they fail, why they fail, and how they succeed after. So I think the learning strategy has a total different mindset than before. It's accepting that failing leads to a better learning, and building an environment where people feel safe to fail. Hope this was helpful.